heat. Come on, pull your pants. Now get up out your seat. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. Now you're listening to Shea Station.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shea Station podcast. It's episode 231 of our lovely show here. By the time you're listening to this, it is Friday, September 5th. Gonna be a solo show from me today. No Jerry Blevins, just Jolly Olive on the Shea Station podcast. But I wanted to get one out because there's a lot going on in the Mets world. There's a huge series coming up against the Cincinnati Reds. And to their credit, the Mets just won a pretty big road series against the Tigers. One that's going to make this road trip look pretty good in the end, assuming they take care of business against the Reds. This is especially encouraging because we didn't get a chance to talk about the absolutely dismal 4-game series at home against the Miami Marlins. That was as brutal as it gets, considering Mets baseball this year. Coming off the heels of a sweep against the Phillies, the second time they've swept the Phillies this season, they laid an egg at home. They got a couple bad starting pitching performances, and it totally murkied up the Jonah Tong debut, which took place in Game 2. So we're going to do a kind of a light recap of that series, a more in-depth recap of the Tigers series, and then talk about some very interesting roster transactions which have taken place over the last 24 hours. But I want to start with Jonah Tong, who's going to be the starter in Cincinnati on Saturday. We got to know him a little bit against the Miami Marlins. He had a very strange debut. The Mets won that game 19-9, but still Tong gave us 5 innings, allowed 1 earned run, 4 runs total. Defense failed him a little bit in that inning. No walks and 6 strikeouts. Very encouraging debut. Mets fans got to see Tong at the highest level for the first time. He had surged past AA and AAA this year to leapfrog Brandon Sproat, who we'll talk about in a little bit, and make his debut before him. But I wanted to get this stat out there. Jonah Tong and Doc Gooden, they're the only 2 Mets pitchers ever under the age of 23 to go 5+ innings and only allow 1 earned run in their MLB debuts. How about that? Another young Mets arm making early Mets history, and we'll definitely talk about Nolan McLean because he had yet another good start against those Detroit Tigers. Other quick things here, the Mets hit 51 home runs in August. They set a franchise record. They still went 11-17 in that month. Francisco Lindor made a bit more of shortstop history. 4 25 homer, 25 stolen base seasons in his career now. No other shortstop has done that. But otherwise, this series was incredibly disappointing by the Mets. They got stymied by Sandy Alcantara, who looks to be Sandy Alcantara again, in case you were worried about that. He came in there and just shut them down over 7 innings. Weird benches clearing in this one. Shout out Mark Vientos for trying to spark something with the Mets offense by kind of jawing at Alcantara after he got, grazed by a hit by pitch. But it was just not in the cards this series for the Mets, whether it was comebacks that fell short or just poor starting pitching performances, and we have a lot to talk about on that front as well, even with the guys that we trust. This was a series to forget, and thankfully, the Mets helped us forget it by getting off the schneid and winning 2 out of 3 on the road against the Tigers. Now, the discourse around the Tigers has shifted a little bit, at least in my perspective, because I said multiple times on social media and talking with other Mets fans that they're the best team in the American League, which by record they are. But I think a lot of American League fans don't view them as such a threat to go all the way and win the pennant this year and make an appearance in the World Series and possibly win that as well. Still, it's hard to beat a team on the road. It's hard to beat a good team on the road, and it's hard to beat the best team in the American League by record on the road, and the Mets did just that. So like they have much of all this season, as soon as they push me away, they pull me back in. But the beginning of the series was a very similar story to one that we've been seeing over the past month. In the finale against Miami, Kodai Senga laid an egg, didn't get into the 5th inning, didn't get past the 5th inning, and took the loss. And in this one, Sean Manaea took the ball in Game 1 and didn't even have his usual first good, 60 to 70 pitches, first good 3 innings, whatever you want to call it. He was getting hit around from the start in this one. His final line, 3 2/3, 5 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, and no decision. Manaea since the beginning of August, and he's not the one that seems to be in jeopardy of losing his spot in the rotation. 27 2/3 innings since the beginning of August, a 7.81 ERA. Weirdly enough, 37 strikeouts, only 5 walks. That's a really good strikeout to walk ratio. But for Manaea, it's troubling because with Senga and his struggles, you kind of feel like you can pinpoint it to that injury that he suffered, the non-arm injury, which seems to be every injury Kodai Senga ever gets, and say, well, that's the reason his season turned. And with Minaya, for all intents and purposes, we believe he's healthy. I don't think he would have come back if he wasn't healthy. I don't think they would have rushed the timeline. But it certainly looks like he's still pitching with some sort of ailment, and the quotes after the game about how he doesn't really know what's wrong and he feels like the process is correct, but the results are just not there compared to what they were last year. That is a sign of trouble, because this was sort of the point where I thought things would begin to turn for Sean Manaea in the right direction, and that just hasn't happened. If anything, things have gotten worse. But as we'll talk about in a little bit, the Mets just have a plethora of starting pitching options that they're going to be able to tap into in September, and I'm just so curious to see what Carlos Mendoza does, what buttons he presses, what guys get piggyback outings, all that, because there are questions that need to be answered with this rotation, considering basically everyone who's not a rookie, which is a weird place to be in as a Mets fan. Let's talk about some good stuff, though. This game was a wild ride, a back and forth affair. The Mets did their best to try and blow this one, but the offense, specifically Juan Soto, would not let them do it. Juan Soto is on an absolute tear, similar to that tear he went on in June and July, where it kind of feels like he's beginning to take over the offense completely. And this one, he rocked a grand slam. He finally got a home run with more than one duck on the pond, and that was a wonderful sight to see. Just sort of took a mighty hack at a Charlie Morton curveball, got just enough of it to get it out to that deep, deep right center field at Comerica Park for the grand slam. That put the Mets up ahead 6-3. And though the Tigers made many comebacks in this game, because the Mets bullpen is shaky as well as their rotation, they were able to hold them off and win this first game 10-8. And that kind of, I feel like, set the tone for the entire series. But more on Juan Soto, the first player in the modern era to hit a go-ahead grand slam and a go-ahead multi-run triple in the same game. That is quite the stat, one I would never even think to look into. But Soto has been doing it in this last 13-game stretch for the Mets since that Atlanta series that they dropped at home. Juan Soto leads the team with a 1.378 OPS, an 822 slug, 6 homers in 13 games, 17 walks to 8 strikeouts. Double the amount of strikeouts, and you still don't have as many walks as Soto does in this window. He has been on absolute fire, an absolute joy to watch. Juan Soto is fun to watch even when he's not right. And now you're seeing the other side of it, which is we're talking about potential NL MVP conversations now. I mean, he's hit enough that you really need to start to factor that in. I don't think he's going to win the award, but you're talking about potentially a top 3 finish. On the year, he leads MLB with 115 walks, 37 home runs, 27 stolen bases. So he's 3 stolen bases away from becoming the first 30-30 player this season, which I don't think you would have been able to bet on DraftKings. I don't even think he would have been an option. Only been caught 3 times, although he did get caught twice in the series, interestingly enough. But the 920 OPS, 161 OPS plus, and a 5.6 WAR on the year. Juan Soto doesn't seem to be having those first-year heebie-jeebies that a lot of big Mets free agents seem to have had in the past. And I think if you're a Mets fan at home, you don't have to pretend like there wasn't any slow start with Juan Soto, because I think, the first 2 months, I don't even want to use the word underwhelming because he was still a good ball player, but it wasn't what we were expecting. I think any Mets fans who acted like it was going to be like that forever are getting a very well-served reality check, because I think most people maintain that we're watching him on a day-to-day basis, that he's just getting comfortable in new skin, in a new uniform, in a new environment, and he needed time to get right. And how about that? 5 months later, Juan Soto looking like the best hitter in the National League and competing for the NL MVP, and kind of put the Mets on his back in this series with some of those performances. Another guy who put the team on his back a little bit, Luis Torrens. I think I gave him a round of applause in the last episode. I got to give him one here again, because if Torrens even hit just like 250 and got on base once a game in the absence of Francisco Alvarez, I think most Mets fans would take that, because they understand the value he brings to the table with his framing, with his ability to throw out runners, with his relationship with the pitching staff, and the fact that he hits the ball hard. I think I want to put together a compilation of every hard hit out Luis Torrens has, because I'm pretty sure he has so many barrel lineouts this year, but those hits are finally starting to find some grass. And in this game, he went 3 for 3 with a double and 2 RBI. since the Alvarez injury, when Alvarez hit the IL officially and Torrens became catcher number 1. 324 average, a 1.3 OPS, and 3 home runs in this tight window of everyday playing time. And don't worry, Alvarez is due back soon as well. But Torrens really picked up his end of the deal there by filling in Alvarez, not only defensively, but offensively as well. It really feels like he picked up that void. In this game 1, the Mets had to overcome some bullpen troubles, which is a sentence I've said way too much this year, especially in the second half when we supposedly improved this bullpen. Gregory Soto comes in, gives up an earned run. Ryan Stanek was the one that allowed that inherited runner. He actually got the win in this game. Tyler Rogers gave us a scoreless inning, and then Ryan Helsley threw 5 pitches in this game, got hit around hard, and credit Mendoza. He said, I'm not going to let this one spiral out of control. This game is so close. Brought in Brooks Raley, and then Edwin Diaz had to come in for those final 4 outs. A very shaky outing. Again, the Mets cannot seem to find any trust with any right-handed reliever that's not named Edwin Diaz. But, I mean, Tyler Rogers here and there, but he hasn't been as consistent as I think you'd like. But that completely gets overshadowed by Ryan Helsley. Point is, this Mets bullpen still very much on shaky waters and could really use Reed Garrett coming back soon. So hopefully that we get some good updates there, and Reed Garrett can come and kind of be the fireman that he was earlier in the year before this elbow inflammation sidelined him. So the Mets survived that first game. That was the biggest game to win in this series, in my opinion. It was the Manaea start. We haven't won a Manaea start in a while, and if you win that game, you feel really good about sending out Nolan McLean in game 2. And this one, it was the first time we got to see Nolan McLean face a little bit of adversity, really since his debut outing against the Mariners, where he had a decent amount of traffic in that game, walked a couple batters, and then didn't walk any in his starts against Atlanta and Philly. In the first inning, the Tigers get him a little bit, although he does make some pretty good pitches here. The key here is that Kerry Carpenter got the 2-out walk. Riley Green works a really good full count at bat. McLean threw him a pretty good, I want to say 2-seam on the inside lower edge. He didn't get the call. That led to another walk, and then Torkelson and Wenzel Perez were able to put together RBI hits to take a 2-1 lead. And you could have pointed to that and said he didn't get the call on that one pitch. It spiraled out into the first ever multi-run inning that he's allowed. Will this rattle him? And it did not rattle him. He needed to find his stuff. He did find his stuff. It ends up going 6 innings in the start. Does not allow another earned run. Only allows one more hit after this and one more walk after this. Strikes out 7 on the day and gets another win. 6 solid innings. He retired the final 14 batters in order. It's the most strikeouts in Mets history through 4 starts besides Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan had 29. Nolan McLean had 28. And then Tyler McGill, Matt Harvey, and Doc Gooden each with 26 through their first 4 starts. Nolan McLean continuing to make Mets history with each and every start that comes to pass. The 25th pitcher in MLB history to win each of his first 4 starts, and the first in franchise history for the New York Mets. Just a special talent. He had Jason Benetti in the Tigers booth, absolutely in awe of the things he was able to do with his pitch repertoire, his 6-pitch arsenal. Just an absolute joy to watch. Every time he pitches, I find myself wondering, okay, when do I get to watch him again? And this one was a real joy, especially because you got to see him mature a little bit almost in the start, mature in the way that he faced a potential big inning, an inning that could have been bigger if not for a sound defensive play at the end to get Wenzel Perez out on the base paths. And then after that, just clean cooking. I mean, this is not a Tigers lineup that rolls over. It's not the most potent lineup in the American League. I fully acknowledge that, but Zach McKinstry is having an awesome year. He torched us in this series. Dylan Dingler has a 760 OPS as a catcher. And that's not even mentioning the top of the order, which is Glaber, Kerry Carpenter, Riley Green. Like, this is a capable lineup that McLean had to deal with. And he's now beaten 3 playoff teams in his first 4 starts. The Mariners, the Phillies, and now the Tigers. 3 division leading, the Mariners don't, but 3 teams that are currently in the playoff picture, Nolan McLean has shoved against. And that, I think, is a really good sign. Analysis, guys, right? The Mets offense put up another big number. It kind of feels like something has clicked. I don't know what the philosophy change was. I heard somewhere, and I wish I remembered where I heard it, that the team is beginning to sit fastball now and adjust to breaking pitches as opposed to vice versa, which I don't know if that's a morsel of truth there. I think they mentioned it on the broadcast. Either way, at the end of this game, they had scored 103 runs in their last 12 games, averaging 8.6 runs per game. No other team in this window had scored more than 80 runs, so a 23-run difference there minimum. They reached double-digit runs for the 6th time in their last 21 games in this contest. They gave Nolan McLean all the support he needed with a 5-run 4th and a 6-run 7th against the Tigers pitching staff. Juan Soto with another homer in this game, another walk, another stolen base. Luis Torrens also clubbed a 3-run homer off the foul pole in this one. Those two guys have been absolute engines of the offense. Can't forget about Pete Alonso, 2 solo shots in this game. Just a very collective good effort here. Everyone in the lineup got a hit except for Cedric Mullins and Francisco Lindor. Multi-hit games for Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil at DH, Torrens, and Beatty. Beatty having a really good stretch as well here. And the Mets take the first 2 games of the series. They get the job done. They put up big numbers in both. They have a sweep opportunity. I wrote on Twitter that they are 9-6 entering this finale game in sweep opportunities. So 9 sweeps on the year, which feels like more than they have. I feel like the Mets have had actually a pretty tough time finishing sweeps against teams that aren't like the Phillies or the Rockies. But apparently they have 9 sweeps this year. I looked into it, double checked. They did not get their 10th sweep in this series. They did fall to the Tigers in the finale. In my opinion, it was through no fault of Clay Holmes, so I honestly thought pitched pretty well in this game. The final line is not pretty because it's Clay Holmes. That's kind of how it goes with him, but he left with 4 2/3 no earned runs in this one. Just missed the edge on that final batter that he faced, Kerry Carpenter. It was tough. The walk to Colt Keith kind of set that up for him facing the lefty there. Gregory Soto comes in to face Riley Green. I think the Mets were going for strikeout potential there, even though Brooks Raley kind of has been a better option as of late in terms of our lefties in the bullpen. Soto allows the inherited runners to score after, again, a really good at-bat by Riley Green, who's very impressive, albeit with all these strikeouts. He's putting together another really nice season, and he was a thorn in the side of the Mets pitching staff in this series. That was a game-tying knock there. Later on, the game's still tied. Marte comes up with a bases-loaded opportunity and just hits into the ground ball double play against Tommy Kahnle. That was a tough one because the Mets were kind of building something in that 6th inning, and then instead it remains 3-2. It goes to the bullpen. It's a battle of the bullpen. Soto gives you a frame. 7th inning rolls around. 1-run game. In comes Ryan Helsley. Now, it's a question to you as a Mets fan and a person watching and observing how you deploy the bullpen in this scenario, because I saw some people going after Mendoza in this one, and I do get it. Because if you're managing for the sweep is attainable by using your best options. And clearly, I think even Mendoza would agree with you that Helsley is not the best option in this scenario. Top of the order, 7th inning, 1-run game. You want to keep it a 1-run game. The alternatives are aplenty. You can use Tyler Rogers in the spot, who hasn't pitched since game 1 and has an off day tomorrow. You can go to Diaz early, assuming that you might not face the top of the order again here and have him pitch the 7th inning. I think that's a little bit too aggressive. You can go to Brooks Raley, who can get guys on both sides of the ball out. He's not necessarily a lefty-lefty guy. Instead, they go to Helsley. And I think that if Helsley builds on his last outing before the Tigers series, which was a scoreless inning against the Phillies, you can hang your hat and say he's building some form of momentum. The outings have not been pretty, but I believe he had a scoreless frame here. Let's say. So he had a scoreless frame against Miami. He had a scoreless frame against the Phillies. He let up 2 runs and blew a save, but the Mets won 6-5 in the Phillies series. So again, just kind of inconsistent overall. And then that first game against the Tigers, he only threw 5 pitches because each of them got basically tattooed, and Mendoza had seen enough. Apparently, he was looking into more tipping issues. He talked to his old teammate, Jack Flaherty, who's on the Tigers now, and he comes into this game. He worked, again, like a couple deep at-bats. They both go full against Colt Keith and Gleyber Torres. Barely missing with some pitches. Great takes by them. Is Helsley tipping? I have no idea. I'm not really good at spotting that kind of thing. I've seen a couple people point out the height of his glove and how much he's burying his hand in the glove. Maybe he is still tipping because some of the takes they had were pretty superb. But 2 men get on. Kerry Carpenter gets one in the meaty part of the zone and just rocks it to right field for this line drive tattooed 3-run homer. And in the blink of an eye, in the blink of 3 batters, it goes from 3-2 to 6-2. And I think most Mets fans turned off the TV or at least put it on mute because it kind of felt like the end of things. It kind of felt like, I don't want to call it a punt, but it felt like let's play with our food a little bit, see if we can get Helsley a scoreless frame in a tight contest against a good team. And it did not work out that way. Helsley doesn't even finish the inning. It was just brutal. It's brutal to watch because I really want to root for Ryan Helsley. I want to see him dominate. I want to see him at the apex of his game, which we have seen over the past 2 years. And this is maybe the worst a pitching trade acquisition has ever performed in a Mets uniform. I mean, it makes me think of Victor Zambrano, and back in 2004. It makes me think of Jason Vargas. It makes me think. I mean, this is a hitting equivalent, but like this is Darren Ruff levels of bad, where you can almost blame the entire team's struggles on one guy. And I don't know what the answer is. He still throws 102 at the top of the zone. He threw some really good sliders against Colt Keith and Gleyber Torres that they spat on. He's trying to mix in a curveball now too. I don't know what the answer is for Ryan Helsley. I don't think it's DFAing him, as I've seen some people allude to, but like we're reaching the point in time where like he might not make the postseason roster if the Mets make the playoffs. You might need to leave that spot for one of these guys that have been up and down all year. I mean, Chris Davinsky, Kevin Herget, Austin Warren, Brandon Waddell, Justin Hageman. I think all those guys have performed better than Ryan Helsley this year and deserve much more consideration for a playoff spot. But it sucks. The Mets gave up a top 10 prospect in their system. I think the package to get Helsley was a lot worse than the package to get Rogers, and he's just been awful. 14 games, 11 innings, 14 earned runs, 19 runs total, an 11.45 ERA as a New York Met. This one was from James Shiano. 14 earned runs in 14 appearances as a Met. He had allowed 13 earned runs in his last 55 appearances as a Cardinal. 55 compared to 14. You can't make this shit up, man. David Stearns, just some tough luck. I loved this acquisition, but it came back to burn the Mets in this one, as it almost burned them in the Philadelphia series, and it burned them before in the Atlanta series, and Seattle, and every series that Ryan Helsley has been on this team where he's pitched, he's given up a run. And it is infuriating. But also, what do you do? I mean, do you just give up on him in high leverage and you say, this is a mop-up guy? This is a guy that's going to pitch in the fourth inning when a guy has a bad start? I don't know what the answer is. So I'm hoping the Mets can figure out something with Ryan Helsley to make him even borderline usable, because right now he's not. And it's been an excruciating watch. But you know who came in after him? Justin Hageman. And he retired all 4 batters he faced, and that's very nice. I pulled these numbers because I couldn't believe them. So I read some of these names before, but I'll read them again. Brandon Waddell, Justin Hageman, Chris Davinsky, Jose Castillo, Rico Garcia, Kevin Herget, and Austin Warren. All of these guys have been the 8th man in the bullpen at some point this year for the Mets. All of them have been DFA'd and recalled and on waivers at some point. We've even lost 2 of them. Jose Castillo and Rico Garcia are no longer in the organization. But these 7 men have combined for 114 innings and a 2.76 ERA on the year. They have an 8.0 K per 9 and a 2.5 walk per 9. These are guys that the Mets risk losing basically every time they send them up and down. These are fringe roster arms that the Mets have ringed out essentially a good starting pitching season out of. So that is, when you look to criticize David Stearns for his trade deadline, for the signing of Frankie Montas, for all that, that's the other side of it. That's what Stearns can provide for you. Guys on waivers and guys that pitched in Korea and Japan and guys that were out of the league or in indie ball that the Mets are getting meaningful innings from. Even if they are mop-up innings in a 6-2 loss to the Tigers, those outs still count. And I think it's important to be said. So that's the end of my rant on bullpen fringe arms, guys. The Mets win a series in Detroit. They have good offensive showings. The bullpen, still a worry. The rotation, still kind of a worry. But they get the series win. That's the most important part. They have a 4-game lead in the wild card chase as it stands. It was thought that the Reds were their closest competition. The Reds are 70-70 on the year. They just lost the series to the Blue Jays. Out of nowhere, the team that the Mets killed right before the trade deadline and basically forced them into selling, the San Francisco Giants, are back. 9-1 in their last 10. Winners of 4 straight. They just swept the Colorado Rockies. They are the closest team in the wildcard chase to the Mets, 4 games behind. The Mets will not play them again this year, but they do have the head-to-head win over them. They're 4-2 thanks to that sweep on the road. So not to do this, because you shouldn't do this as a fan, but I am about to do this. If the Mets go 11-11 in their last 22 games, so that if they play 500 ball, which, by the way, if you can't play 500 ball in your last 22 games, you don't deserve to make the playoffs. If they play 500 ball in these last 22 games, the San Francisco Giants would need to go 16-5, if I have my math correctly, because that would place them at 87 wins. 16-6 is what they would need to do, which is crazy. 10 games over 500 pace in your final stretch here. The Giants are playing some lesser teams right now, sure, which is why they're on this run. But honestly, they have all the talent in the world, especially in that lineup. So they're still a threat to be posed there. They swept the Rockies. They took 2 out of 3 against the Orioles, swept the Cubs, and took 2 out of 3 on the road against the Brewers in this last stretch here. They have Cardinals, Diamondbacks, and then a whole lot of games with the Dodgers left. So we'll see. If they can beat the Dodgers, they make this wildcard chase very interesting. And on the flip side of that, the Mets go to Cincinnati this weekend in a kind of way of controlling their own fate to maybe bury the Reds out of this thing. If they can go on the road and take 2 out of 3 against the Reds, it means that they avoid losing the season series to the Reds. It'll be 3-3, and it means they'll gain another game, 6-game lead on them. So this is a very important series for the Mets, and they are putting their best foot forward, which I do appreciate. They have David Peterson going tomorrow, who has not been sharp as of late. He had a really tough month of August. David Peterson in August, a 6.68 ERA in 6 starts, 35 strikeouts to 17 walks and a whip of 1.55. Compare that to July, where he threw his first complete game shutout of his career, 4 starts at 1.05 ERA. So hopefully Peterson isn't tiring out. This is his career high in innings, and hopefully he has enough left in the tank to make some meaningful starts down the stretch from the Mets. He'll go up against Andrew Abbott, who was an all-star this year for the Reds. Great, crafty lefty, very fun to watch. Worried about what he'll do to the Mets, because the Mets against left-handed pitching is not great, but their offense has been great as of late. Jonah Tong gets his second major league start in Game 2 here against Brady Singer, who has also been putting together a really nice year for the Reds, 12-9 with a 4.08 ERA. Tong has the 1 start under his belt, 5 innings pitched, 1 earned run. We'll see if we can get more from him in a very hitter-friendly environment, and the Reds have been matching the ball lately, even though they've been losing. I'm expecting some high-scoring games. The finale, the Reds have not announced the starter yet, but it seems as though the Mets have, and that's where we'll get to the big news of this episode. Going on Sunday for your New York Mets, making his major league debut, is Brandon Sproat, who has finally climbed up from AAA, the last of the 3 young arms to make the big leagues, and it's all happened in very quick succession. He's going to get his first chance on Sunday in the middle of a playoff chase against a playoff contending team in a pretty dangerous environment, hitting-wise, at Great American Ballpark. Brandon Sproat, first of all, congratulations. This was the guy with the most hype entering the year. McLean and Tong kind of surged past him, but much similar to them, Sproat has changed himself a lot this year. He stopped throwing his sinker and sweeper to lefties, replaced it with changeups and curveballs. These are poster notes of James Shiano, who's great with Mets prospects as well. Fastball sitting at 96 to 97 miles per hour on the year. Brandon Sproat, the overall numbers don't look sexy. It's an ERA north of 4 at AAA this year, but a 1.73 ERA over his last 10 starts. And on Monday, he went 7 innings, no earned runs, 3 hits, 2 walks, and 9 strikeouts in what was his finale as a AAA pitcher. He's been very, very good. This call-up almost feels overdue in a way. He's going to get the ball on Sunday. So that kind of leads us into a larger discussion about the Mets rotation, which I wanted to save for now. So I just mentioned David Peterson struggling mightily since the beginning of August. Sean Manaea, since the beginning of August, has been even worse than Peterson. And then Kodai Senga also completes that trio of very disappointing pitching. His last 8 starts after returning against the Royals, 35 2/3 innings, a 6.56 ERA, 22 walks, and 8 home runs. Kodai Senga. So that's half the Mets rotation. As it stands, half this 6-man rotation has been ineffective for a calendar month. And Peterson, unfortunately, gets lumped in there because of a couple really bad starts and a couple good ones. So what do you do if you're Carlos Mendoza and Jeremy Hefner? Because now you have Peterson, Manaea, Senga. Those are kind of your veterans. Holmes in the middle, who's kind of been treading water, giving Mets a good enough outing each time out there, competitive at the very least. And then Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean, who have been sensations. have been terrific. I mean, Tong, I want to see a little bit more, but McLean, I think you can put that title on him. Now you add a 7th pitcher to the mix. That's Brandon Sproat. So now you have 7 pitchers. That's not even factoring in Tyler McGill, who just made his last rehab start at AAA Syracuse. 8 starting pitchers. And the time for 6-man rotations, in my opinion, has come and gone because you need your good starting pitchers to start pitching every 5th day because these are must-win games. You know, you're down the stretch here. The Mets need to basically play better than 500 ball realistically if they want to make sure they don't lose this playoff spot because division kind of feels like it's a little bit out the window. In my opinion, and we got to see Sproat on Sunday and see what he's all about, I think it's in the Mets' best interest to give McLean a regular spot. You give David Peterson a regular spot. I know he had a tough August, but I think you still trust that guy. Jonah Tong gets a regular spot because you called him up. You made the big move that a lot of people thought you weren't going to make. You might as well see what you have and don't put him in this piggyback scenario, especially when he hasn't shown any reason to make you believe he's not good enough to do 2 times through the order. Those 3 get a regular spot, in my opinion. The storyline with Manaea has been 60 to 70 pitches, 3 to 4 good innings, and then things tire out. So he's a perfect piggyback candidate in my mind. So is Tyler McGill, who's not entirely healthy. He feels like a piggyback candidate in my mind as well. Sproat, we don't really know what we have yet. He could be a part of this trio that's going to get every 5th day, but maybe not. Kodai Senga, they're talking about demoting to AAA and seeing if he'll consent to that. We'll find out this tomorrow, which means by the time you're listening to this, you may already know. In my opinion, they're in a very good situation to have 3 regular starters in Peterson, Tong, and McLean, and then some sort of piggyback tandem of Manaea Holmes on one hand, or, Manaea Sproat if you want to combine them that way. And then on the other, Sproat and Senga, Sproat and McGill. Like they have a realistic way to make this a normal 5-man rotation that they can employ a piggyback in because they have these 2 extra roster spots, 28 roster spots compared to 26. That's where those 2 spots can come in. So actually, I know it's been bad, and I fully acknowledge that it's been bad, but the Mets are actually in a really good position right now with their starting pitching, with the amount of options that they have, and the guys that they know aren't fully capable of giving them 5 competitive innings right now. Now with Senga, I don't know what happens. I think he still looks like he's hurt. He still looks like he feels uncomfortable in his own body and his own mechanics right now. He doesn't look like the guy we saw in 23. I don't even want to say the guy we saw earlier in the year because Kodai Senga was playing Houdini all season long. And that was a very deceiving low ERA he had for a majority of the year. In fact, his numbers are still awesome on the year. I mean, when I told my coworkers that they're thinking about demoting him and seeing if he'll consent, they said he has a 3.02 ERA in 22 starts. Why would you want to demote that guy? But you look past his first half here, and he's been one of the worst pitchers in baseball in terms of starting pitchers that are qualified. So the Mets have a conundrum on their hands that they'll need to have firm answers to after the Red Series. Because going in the Red Series is Peterson, Tong, Sproat. Those are all guys that the Mets are hoping can give them competitive outings. We'll see what happens after on Monday. Speaking of returns, so Brandon Sproat, I guess not returning, but Tyler McGill returning to the big league club. So is Francisco Alvarez potentially, which I cannot believe. I cannot believe that Francisco Alvarez is still fighting his way back. He has 2 separate hand injuries on either hand. He has a torn ligament in his right thumb, I believe, and now a broken pinky on his left. And still, he did some rehab games. His last 2 games, 2 hits, a grand slam, a walk, and he caught the entirety of both those games. So he's not even a DH. He's fully catching, and he expects to return in this Cincinnati series. I wonder if we have an update at any point here today. I'm going to look into that very quickly. But for all it's worth, Francisco Alvarez still looks healthy, still looks like he's ready to go, still looks like he's in the middle of that hot streak we saw him on before, he has his untimely injury there. No more head first slides. Just make a promise to me. No more head first slides, and we're good, Francisco. No more beef. Excited to see him back. Terens, another round of applause for really picking it up when he went down there and we needed some offense at the bottom of the order. Jose Siri also was on a rehab assignment, 1 for 5 with 4 strikeouts in his last game as the DH. I don't really know where he fits on this roster. He's been gone so long that I've kind of just forgotten about him. Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. Not really at the forefront of news, I think, for the Mets right now. Bit more news on the farm. Kevin Parada promoted to AAA, which, you know what? you put your hands together for that one. He started the year so poorly at Double-A after a really disappointing season last year. It was starting to look like potentially curtains on him making huge leaps throughout the minor league system. He's no longer on the top 100 prospects list or even in the top 10 Mets prospects list, but a 753 OPS in the minor leagues this year. 754 was his mark at Double-A. 10 homers in 92 games, 33 walks to 100 strikeouts. These are not bad offensive numbers. He'll still need to make some strides, but it's cool to see another, name in the Mets farm system take another leap here. We saw Ryan Clifford get promoted to AAA after some guys got the promotion ahead of him from AAA to the major leagues. It's cool to see these guys continue to make strides and continue climbing. As I mentioned before, the Mariners claimed Jose Castillo off waivers from the Mets. The Mets, by proxy, claimed another guy off waivers, Wander Suero, who you might remember from the Washington Nationals. He was with the Braves. He's got a career ERA of 4.96 and 199 major league innings as a reliever. So that's the new up-and-down guy on the block here for the New York Mets. So a lot has happened, a lot of roster turnover, and a big series coming up for the New York Mets that they, you can't call any road series a must win, but the Mets, they are a better team than the Cincinnati Reds. They need to go there and they need to prove it. Couple 6:40 games and a 1:40 p.m. getaway day, and then it's off to Philadelphia for a 4-game series. Our last matchup with Philadelphia potentially this year if we don't meet them in the playoffs. That's going to be a doozy. But Mets are off to a good start on this 10-game road trip in the middle of September here. We'll see if they can stick the landing. I think if you go to Cincinnati and you win that series, you're 4-2, and you go to Philadelphia, you split that 4-gamer, you finish the road trip 6-4. I think that gives you a ton of momentum going into the homestand where you get the Rangers, Padres, and Nationals. It's right in front of our New York Mets. It is right there for the taking. I'm just hoping they can keep their composure and stick the landing here at the end of the season. But lots of starting pitching questions to be answered. Not a lot of questions to be answered with the offense. Everyone's just kind of doing their thing, and it makes you wonder why it wasn't this way for the longest time. But just going down the list, Tyrone Taylor was second on the team in OPS in that 13-game stretch since August, middle of August there against the Atlanta Braves. 1.28 OPS and 24 play appearances. Unfortunately, Tyrone Taylor hit the IL, which stinks. He was playing his best ball of the year easily. Torrens is above 1,100. Mark Vientos is above 1,100. Brandon Nimmo above 1,000. Pete Alonso, 2 ticks under 1,000, 998 OPS. Jeff McNeil, 969. The 9th best OPS on the team since that Atlanta series is Francisco Lindor, who has a 798 OPS. The team is absolutely red hot. They're hitting homers. They're continuing to steal bases, not quite at the same efficiency that they were before, but point stands. If the Mets are putting up 5 runs every night, they're putting themselves in fantastic position to win ball games. And you just hope that they can keep it up throughout September. I still feel like the best baseball for this team is still in front of them. I feel like they haven't played their best ball yet this year. And I'm hoping another rookie coming up and another good rookie performance and some sort of assembly in the starting rotation with piggybacks and joint guys. I'm hoping that can begin to take form and really give much needed rest to the bullpen instead of 5 innings every night, 3 innings every night. And then those guys start to pitch better. I just feel like Sproat could be a missing piece of the puzzle for this team. And it is an unfair amount of pressure to put on a rookie who's making his first outing in September in the middle of a playoff chase against a playoff team. Like, I want to stress that if things don't go well for Sproat on Sunday, it's not the end of the world. And almost the expectations have been set unfairly for him because of how exciting Jonah Tong's debut was and how exciting Nolan McLean has been. But you got to realize that there's a lot of talent there, and I'm really excited to watch Brandon Sproat pitch, and I'm very happy the Mets are not sending him out to Philadelphia for his first start. I was really worried about that. I still think they should have called him up sooner, but I was so worried that they were going to feed him to the dogs in that very hostile environment, and thankfully they're not. Which, by the way, speaking of hostile environments, or I guess not speaking of hostile environments, the Reds crowd. I was watching the Reds games every night, because it's that time of year, baby. I'm watching Giants, Rockies, and Reds, Blue Jays. Cincinnati, we got to get more people to the ballpark. Those games were empty. I know it's a weekday, but come on. I know school's back in session, but come on. It looked like Citi Field in 2023 when the Mets were out of it, except the Reds are very much in it. But hopefully the Mets can end those hopes this weekend. Sorry to any Reds fans listening. If you are listening, what are you doing here? No offense. I think that covers pretty much about everything for this Mets team. Another solo show for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Sorry if I rambled on a little bit here and there, as I tend to do when I'm the only man on the mic. We'll be back next week. We'll be starting to record a lot more frequently as the Mets continue to climb down the stretch here towards, hopefully, playoff baseball. And I want to leave you with this. The Mets don't make the postseason in back-to-back years very often. In fact, they've only done it twice in their franchise's history. 1999 and 2000, where they went to the NLCS both years. They won one, they lost one. They lost to the Yankees in the World Series. 2015 and 2016. Everyone remembers 2015. You might not remember 2016. That's because it was a one-game wildcard loss. If the Mets finish the job and stick the landing and make the wildcard, or who knows, win the division, what the hell, it'll be just the third time in franchise history that they make the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. And this is year 4 and 5 of the Steve Cohen regime. Unprecedented in terms of this team's history, an unprecedented amount of success. And it's cool to see this team still competitive deep into the season for the third time in 4 years. I know that it hasn't always gone exactly how we expected to, especially late in the season in Mets history. But I have a lot of optimism, and I love that this front office is unafraid to give their young guys a shot, guys that they've taken a lot of time to develop. There was questions as to why Nolan McLean wasn't up earlier, and it's because he spent a lot of this year evolving as a pitcher, and the Mets are getting the best version of him right now. I do believe that they're going to get the best version of Brandon Sproat. If they had jumped the gun and called him up in June when he was still struggling at AAA and just relied on his stuff and his velo, who knows how it might have affected him. I think that they've put him in a really good position to succeed, and I'm so excited to watch him pitch on Sunday. I think that'll do it for my show today as I end my wax poetic. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you watched on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, make sure you watch all the way to the end. All that stuff really helps out. We appreciate it a lot. If you're listening on a podcast app, leave us a rating, leave us a review. That stuff really helps. Spread the word about our show. And I will see you guys next week for some more big time recaps. Red Series coming up. Philly Series after that. 7 games. If the Mets can survive and play like the team we all expect them to be, they're going to come out the other side of this looking very good towards October. LFGM. Let's go, Brandon Sproat. Have yourself a night. Let's go, Mets.
Shay Station, Jerry and Charlie. Shay Station, Jerry and Charlie. Thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next time, where we'll be back.
Station.